I'm thinking about communication and language, I suppose. It's not just about language, it's about art and people talking to one another. A whole variety of communication, I suppose. And what I'm thinking about, certainly when I read something or I hear something, perhaps a video on YouTube or when I see some artwork or a film or something like that, you know, my responses are various. Sometimes I kind of get it straight away, and I just feel like the information is just being passed to me, like someone would pass a present or pass an object from them to myself. Simple transmission of information, if you like. Or vice versa, that I'm kind of unproblematically stepping forward into that information. That's probably more accurate, actually. Or just simply reaching forward and grasping it. That's more how it feels. But other times I feel different things going on. Sometimes I'm baffled. Sometimes I'm bewildered. Sometimes I feel excluded, or I feel that the writing or the words that I'm hearing or the image I'm looking at is completely impenetrable. Sometimes I get kind of caught up in it. And I'm just wondering what the relationships between these things are, whether there is a consistent relationship between these things. I suppose I should think about those words first. I mean, the words I'm thinking of there, baffling, which is one of my favourite words right now, and bewildering and impenetrable. I mean, certainly baffles. I know I think of one or two things about baffles. I know that milk lorries, milk tankers, and probably any kind of tanker that's got liquid in it, have got baffle plates inside. These are like sheets of steel welded into the inside of the tanker that have got holes in, and the purpose of those baffle plates is to stop the liquid inside from just sloshing backwards and forwards en masse. There's a great big kind of huge quantity of liquid sloshing about, which would make the tanker undrivable. We'd probably tip it over on corners. So the baffle plates in there, they slow down the sloshing of the liquid, just let a certain amount of that liquid go through. They kind of organise the travel of that liquid backwards and forwards. And I think you also have baffles in exhaust pipes, I think. Again, to either to hold back certain of the contents, maybe the pollutants, or maybe to do something with the sound levels. So maybe something about baffling language or baffling images, which is a bit like that. It's the purpose of something of baffling is to slow down your comprehension, to impede that natural, that's relatively simple, deceptively simple, I think, reaching forward and grasping of this object of knowledge that you're being offered. It's a bit more hard work. You have to kind of work your way through a little bit. You have to find some pathways, you have to leave some things behind. Perhaps some of your own interpretive strategies have to be abandoned and are left behind the filters in the baffle plate. So perhaps there's something in there of baffling language. And then there's this word bewilderment. I really like bewilderment as well, actually. I like feeling bewildered sometimes. And I think when I read something that's bewildering, if I'm not feeling too insecure, if I'm not just feeling lost by that or just abandoned, which is obviously part of that experience, or looking at something which is bewildering, I think what's happening there is that it's almost like the knowledge or the ideas are being presented in the form of a forest, or as perhaps at the other end of a forest, that you're invited to enter in order to be able to perhaps seek this object of knowledge. But when you get there, you find yourself wandering between ideas, not exactly randomly, because they have been put there for a purpose, or perhaps they've grown there naturally for whatever purpose they automatically have. But you find yourself wandering in this forest for quite a long time, possibly, and maybe emerge from that forest in a completely unexpected place. So again, it's not quite simply a question of stepping forward and reaching up and grabbing the knowledge. You find yourself in a knowledge acquisition, a knowledge relationship, which isn't straightforward in that sense, but is it does lead you into this wild place where you become bewildered. People like William Burroughs, I think, are bewildering at times. I think Finnegan's Wake is bewildering. Again, it invites you in because you think you know what it's about, and then it spits you out in a completely different place. There's a train coming, it's going to get very, very noisy in a minute. There it goes. So baffling and bewildering, and then some texts are impenetrable. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing as well. I'm not putting value judgment on this stuff right now. You know, where you just feel like you're meeting a brick wall. I can't think of any written examples of that right now, but certainly some artworks like that. I'm thinking of Andy Warhol's early work. I find that impenetrable, quite deliberately impenetrable and fascinatingly impenetrable. These are just the reproductions of Brillo boxes or some of the screen print stuff. You just it's just there, and you can't be kind of you can't even get into it. Never mind be escorted through it to the sunny uplands of acquired knowledge. You just can't even get in there. It just stands there in front of you. And I find that quite fascinating. I find that impenetrability fascinating. But I certainly have read text, and I've listened to things on YouTube and elsewhere which have been impenetrable in a kind of a similar way, I think. And the last one, which I find in a sense the most interesting, is either language or artworks or images or people talking to me, which have this kind of weird capturing effect. I think I may have mentioned this once before, but it seems like some pieces of writing work almost like the Cretan paradox, which is that story about some guy from Crete. I don't think it was Empedocles, but it might have been. This guy from Crete, anyway, he's supposed to have stood up in the forum and said that all Cretans are liars. But of course, if all Cretans are liars, then what he's saying is a lie, which means that all Cretans aren't liars. Cretans tell the truth, which means that all Cretans are liars, therefore. And it just goes round in this strange, labyrinthine convolution, really. And it doesn't spit you out in any direction at all. It keeps you in the text, keeps you in there. In a really, I mean, with that one, obviously, it's a very simple way, but I think some more complex writings do that, and some more complex artworks do that. My favourite art example, which for me at least does this, is a piece by an artist called Gavin Turk, who did a piece called Pop, which is a life-size realistic sculpture of himself, Gavin Turk, dressed as and standing in the position of Sid Vicious in the film The Great Rock and Roll Swindle. He's kind of standing with his legs slightly apart, and he's holding a gun. So he's adopting that position. But Sid Vicious, of course, is adopting the position that Elvis Presley made famous in one of his cowboy films, but is actually more famous because Andy Warhol reproduced it bazillions of times in various screen prints, multiple Elvis screen prints. And of course the cowboy that is kind of referred to there is a Baudrillardian simulacrum, if you want. It's those kind of cowboys never really existed anyway. So you know, for me at least, when you look at Gavin Turk's Pop, you're kind of caught in this this web of reference, this play of signifiers, I suppose I should say, in which, you know, it doesn't spit you out anywhere. It's just one thing after another, looping round and around within the various bits of media that it refers to, which again I find quite fascinating. I think I also find that, and this is one of the things I'm quite interested in right now, you also find that in religious writing. That kind of writing is a religious practice, I think. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it, but it's interesting. And all sorts of different levels. I think at its most simple, it appears in very crude tautologies, which I guess some people will be fascinated and caught up in. Tautologies like another train coming. I'll just let this train go past. Yeah, tautologies like, you know, the fact that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. How do you know? Because it says so in the Bible. It's a tautology which, you know, could easily, you have to be pretty stupid to be caught up in, but you know, people are unfortunately caught up in just that kind of stupid tautology. But it has the same kind of logic. It plucks you into the text, promises with the suggestion that it might actually lead to the gaining of knowledge at the other end, but doesn't. It just keeps you there in an endless loop, like trying to find a corner of an igloo. But more interestingly, I think you also find those not exactly tautologies, but self-referential, infinite, labyrinthine constructions in things like Zen koans, which are either internally incoherent or internally inconsistent, or lead to paradox. And there's something very interesting about those for me. Again, they don't give you the comfort of leading you out onto some piece of information that seems to have this kind of objective quality of being a known thing. They insist that you stay in there.